back, everybody, to another episode of the Rocking Midlife podcast. And as I always say, I am super excited for today's guest. And it's really amazing where you meet some of these incredible people. And I connected with Michele in an authors group that we're both part of with a program that we're both doing. And here she is. And this lady's just going to blow you away. So Michele Williams, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too, and I love the topic we're going to be talking about. So just to fill everybody in, here's just a little bit about Michele, otherwise known as Dr. Tiny. So Michele's mission is to be a catalyst to challenge housing's status quo. And this is so powerful because reading her notes about the housing situation in America, it is just as bad here in New Zealand, and I think in most countries. So she's challenging that by thinking differently about health so that individuals and communities can thrive. She has a nonprofit called COBA US, which means connects, organizes, builds, and advances small-scale, healthy community development. So basically, tiny homes. And I know there's so many people interested in tiny homes at the moment. Now, Michele also has an amazing story of rocking her midlife. She got her doctorate in public policy in, was it your 50s, Michele?
When I turned 50, I said to myself, I have 50 more years to live. What am I going to do? And we had health policy come out in America called the Affordable Care Act. And I thought that it had nothing to do with healthcare and everything to do with insurance care. And I said, you know what? I could write better policy than this. And I said, I'm going to. So I registered for a PhD program, and 5 years later, I'm walking across the stage.
Dr. Tiny. Dr. Tiny is in the house.
Yeah.
That is, you know what I love most about that is you saw a need and thought, well, okay, how do I fulfill that? And you made it happen. And it was so much bigger, wasn't it, than just you going off to find yourself at 50. You've actually saw a need and determined to go do something about it, which is absolutely powerful. And before we really dive into that, because I'm going to get you to tell us even more about your story, because I know you're going to encourage so many women. But Michele, when she's, got time on her hands, is also an avid cyclist and a member of the Air Force cycling team. And get this, she cycles nearly 7,500 miles per year. You are a machine, girl. Goodness me. All right, Michele, look, let's dive on in. Tell us a little bit about your story. How is it that you ended up in this space at midlife? And just let us know who you are and what you're doing.
Yes. So some people call it the second act. And I had a military career. First, I was a pharmacist, and I was a pharmacist in the Air Force. And then I was a commander, and, I had a great Air Force career, and it was ending. Mm-hmm. And it was ending at the same time the Affordable Care Act came out. So here I am, 50 years old, and saying, what am I going to do for the next 50 years of my life? Because I don't have that identity of the military. It was just something that I did because I did it. And then I chose the school and public policy with a health policy specialty. And so in the whole journey of the dissertation and the research, I realized that housing, health, and economy all surround themselves, and it's the social determinants of health that really create thriving communities.
Yeah.
And so I was also doing real estate at the time. I had a boatload of rentals. I had a coaching program for people that wanted to learn, people of my age, our age, that wanted to learn how to do real estate. So I had a coaching program just for that.
What don't you do, Michele? That's phenomenal. Goodness me. Yeah. So we've got real estate, pharmacy, Air Force, go get a PhD in public health policy.
So it all
incredible.
Yes, everything that you do in life kind of just sets you up. And I realized that every community across America has affordability issues, and it's across the world.
It is. Yeah.
And because, we started in urban and then went to suburban, and now, there's many, many, many reasons. And in America, it's because of poor policy. And we now want to make smaller units that are affordable. Policy has kept us stuck in building 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot houses.
Right.
And so I really saw a need in my community, and it's in every community. How do we create affordable housing without using a lot of land? And you can do high-rise micros like they do in China, okay, but then you've got a height restriction. And so it's every policy, you're bumped up against. And we're talking about women, and a lot of women, after they retire, they probably don't have a spouse, or they don't want to have a spouse, and they want to live small. They want to be able to have this mobility. And how can I help them live that kind of lifestyle? And yes, you watch HGTV and see all these beautiful models, some with wheels, some on skids, a variety of tiny houses. But I'm saying, how do you make those affordable so that somebody can lay down $30,000, or if they wanted, $70,000 for a great looking one, and still have a lot of their retirement savings rather than having a $480,000 mortgage.
Yes.
So
yes.
when you think about that tiny house, a lot of places don't allow them. So I decided, and I was never called Dr. Tiny. Somebody nationally named me that. And so I said, I'm gonna do the hard work of pounding at the county council and the governor and every council, I don't know what you call them in New Zealand, but it's your elected officials.
Yeah.
And your policy. To make policy such that people can live tiny, whether they rent a little space in the back of somebody else's house, whether they move out of their big house into a tiny house in their backyard and then rent out their big house. But it's, how do you create wealth from just the fact of tiny, not only in savings of purchasing, but how do you, if you have an asset like a house, how do you rent that out? So that's one thing that I teach. That's the one I'm focusing on, because I was doing 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. And after my husband died, my mother-in-law died, my dad died, like while within 6 months, I said to myself, okay, God, what is it that I'm here to do?
Yeah.
And I kept on asking the question, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? And it was to go and knock on doors to create new policy for everybody, so that anybody can just do their application and say, I'm putting a tiny house in the backyard, without having to go through 15 different whatevers. So that was mine to do, just focusing on housing that is affordable. There's a big distinction between homelessness and housing for people that work. And I focus on the people that work. And so if you can deal with housing insecurity, people won't go homeless. Not everybody wants to live tiny, but a good portion of them does. And the majority of people are women. They are age 52 to 70. That's the niche for tiny houses.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, oh gosh, there's so many jumping off points we could go down, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm one of these people that loves watching the tiny house programs on YouTube. I love the design and everything that goes behind them. And it's something that I was saying to Michelle earlier, it's starting a tiny home community is one of those, I've never said it online before, one of those random little dreams that I've actually had tucked at the back of my head. And with the thought being, for women around that 50 mark, particularly women who were single, whether by choice or through, having lost their partners, which is a journey that so many women in their 50s, 60s upwards take. And to me, they just seem so fabulous because they can still, as opposed to an apartment block, they've still got their autonomy. They've still got their way of expressing themselves in their little home. and yet the safety and camaraderie of community. I really think they're an exciting
Absolutely.
possibility for living in the future. So
Yes.
before we dive a little bit more into that, I mean, you touched on some very, very real issues that a lot of women at midlife go through. You've had a lot of loss.
Mhm.
I hope you don't mind me sharing that, Michelle told me just prior to this that she recently lost her closest girlfriend as well. And, you've lost your husband and a number of close family members. How have you gotten through this? Well, I know you probably haven't gotten through it, but how are you living life through that grief? How have you managed to go on and do what you're doing?
Well, my girlfriend, the one that just died, I could hear her saying, "Stop moping around and get your ass in gear." I could
Well,
hear her saying that.
yeah,
So I'd be like, "Okay, Kelly, just make it easy for me then." So now I feel like I've got this connection in heaven to make what I do easier because she was my business partner.
right.
We both, when we got gifts from heaven, she was in this line and I was in this line, and they were both different gifts, but we together were
Compatible.
amazing. I had a rough time with my husband and then my mother-in-law, then my dad.
Mhm.
And how did I get through that? Well, first of all, I hate to say this, but I was really grateful for COVID because it was lockdown.
Yeah,
And I am an introvert to begin with, so I closed up.
me too. Yes.
Yeah, and it was just easier for me because I had the conversations with God all
Yeah.
day, and I journaled a lot. I colored, I did puzzles, and I would sit and say, "What is mine to do?" I mean, I've had this great background of everything that I just told you that I did, but that was in my past. What is in my future, and what is it that I'm to do, God? Just show me what is mine to do. And I would just get these little blips, an email or a phone call or just really weird things. And I just woke up like 18 months later and said, "Oh, is that it?" And when you said to be a catalyst of change and to rock the housing industry, to making them think differently so that communities thrive as a community, not just as an individual, so that not in a socialist way of, the poor or the rich giving to the poor, none of that, but you lift everybody up.
Yeah.
It does, so that's how I got through it. And my biggest thing is just to really get still and quiet and get rid of all the distractions and just let it come. Go to
Thank you
bed.
so much for sharing that, Michelle. I know just what you've shared is going to be a blessing to so many listeners who are,
Yeah, I hope so.
walking those
Oh, and I
paths
read
now.
17 grief books.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
read so many grief books that I would go to my grief group and I would have to give a book report. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the facilitator couldn't keep up with the books. So
Yeah.
I would bring the books and I would give a book report. Some people would take it and some people just were, "Oh, no, I don't like that topic." I was there because my husband was hit. You said I was a cyclist. Well, my husband, he used to do 10,000 miles a year.
Goodness.
And I'm right now 61. He was 23 years older than me. So when he was hit, he was 79.
Wow.
And he was a big child. And so, not only did I lose my partner, but I lost my biking buddy and
Mhm.
my travel buddy and,
Yeah.
my whole thing. But um, so we put it up I'm sure you have them, they're not national ghost bikes. So somebody in the community gets an old bike, spray paints it white, and puts it in the place where the accident occurred.
Right. No, I
So
haven't heard of that.
somebody did
Wow.
that. Yeah, it's yeah, ghost bike. And
Yeah.
so I created like a little garden around it. And I took the bulbs from my father's house when
Mhm.
I sold it after he died, and I created a garden around this ghost bike. And then I put a big sign up, and it was about bike safety, pedestrian safety, and
Mhm.
slow down. We were always bike advocates, but it made me a better advocate for safety. So I'm asked to speak on that topic alone all the time.
I love that you allowed yourself to feel that grief and work through that grief with reading and time out. And like you said, COVID would have been perfect to physically help you do that. But I also love how you didn't stop in that grief, that you're letting those things propel you into
Exactly.
purposeful
That's
living,
a good word.
intentional living.
Uh-huh.
So let's swing back to tiny homes, because I know
Okay.
there's going to be so many people who are really interested in knowing more about tiny homes. They're becoming quite a thing here in New Zealand. Like
Yep.
you said, they can look amazing, they can be beautiful, but they can still be pricey. And I love what you're doing is you're looking for an affordable option that doesn't
Mhm.
drain the bank, but still allows people to have income. That's really, really important. So where do people find these communities? Where do they get started? Let's say I come to you,
Okay.
I'm in my late 60s. Where do I start?
Okay. So there's a process that people go through. Some people go cold turkey from their 3-bedroom, 2-house, 2,000 square, 2-bath house down to 400 square feet. Some people can do that cold turkey, but others, we hang on to stuff.
Mm.
And first, it's a decluttering process and you eliminate some things. And then it's a minimalistic. And that's just even before you even think about a tiny house. And then there's different types of tiny houses. On wheels, do you want it on a foundation? Are you going to put it in a RV park? Are you going to put it in a community? Are you going to park it in somebody's backyard? Are you going to travel with it? And here's another fact that people don't know about tinies is that the majority of tiny houses with wheels, they are only moved 3 times a year. So
Oh,
people pick up, drive to the destination,
hmm,
hang out for whatever months, and then drive. It's rare that people do a cross country thing because those tiny houses are so difficult to drive.
right.
And if you don't have the right truck, and they're expensive to pull. I've seen so many nurses, traveling nurses now in van conversions,
Right.
and they live out of their van. Yeah. I mean, that's on that's on my bucket list next. So those are some basic questions. And then where are you going to put it? And then after you say, oh, well, I want to put it on an acre. Okay. Let's look at the code in
Mm.
that area. So then you have to look at the density in the zoning, the land use. Does it have utilities? There's a whole checklist of just before you even, I always tell people, do not go and buy a piece of land. If your
Mm, okay.
intention is to do it tiny,
Yeah.
look at up that land first and research it and then proceed.
Mm.
Sometimes it's in the too hard bucket. So that's the process that I take people through. And I speak to a lot of elected officials. I talk to people all over the country and we work on building standards for tiny housing. That's
Hmm.
exactly what we want. When people, my elected officials will say, oh, we don't have enough affordable housing. Okay, well, this is wrong with your policy. And if you change this, you're going to create housing that's affordable. Meanwhile, I work with people that, what do I do first?
Yeah.
This is the hard part, the policy part. There's a lot of people that walk through the process with people of decluttering, minimalizing, and building. And the way that I keep my tinies affordable is that they're standardized. So like
Yes.
I only
Yeah.
have 6 models of tinies and they're built by a modular. So they're built in a warehouse and then placed. But he can do 3 lines of 12. So at any one given time, he can do 36 houses. Yeah, 36 houses for me.
Oh, that's
I have
brilliant.
another line.
Sounds like the IKEA of tiny homes.
Yes, yes.
You can choose
And
your modules in the flat pack.
exactly, yes. And then I have another builder who just moved to Delaware, and he does what's called park models.
Uh-huh.
And park models are good for 9 months out of the year, and they're usually in a campground or whatever. So what he does is he creates a livable 12 months just by increasing the insulation and some of the flooring and makes it livable 12 months out of the year.
Hmm.
So I just say, do not put granite counters and silver appliances
Yeah.
and all that. I mean, they are nice. And if somebody wants that, that's fine. I want to keep them affordable. And that's the key is really I mean, everybody's living to be 100, and you have to plan for that. And now,
Yeah.
you have the opportunity to live small and do the things that you want to do.
I just love the concept, and I really absolutely back you as saying it is something that could be a real game changer for so many women in their retirement years, because in general, it's women that tend to retire with less money in the bank, less ability to support themselves to the standard that they might have been living at earlier on years beforehand. Let's just swing this back a little bit. I would love some of your insight for women who are sitting in their 40s, 50s, 60s, facing that question that you faced of what's next for me as a person.
Some people say, do what you love, the money will follow. Okay. I'm going to put that aside because a lot of people don't know what they want to do and don't know what they love to do. And some people don't have the finances to do what they love to do. So how can you create a, another chapter? It might not be your final chapter. It's a chapter with what you have and where do you want to go? Like we always talk about in our author program, your big why. What is it that you really love to do? And why is it that you get up in the morning?
Yeah.
And that's a big contemplation for a lot of people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what does make me get up in the morning? Because you're going to be retired one day and you're not going to have to get up and go to wherever you're going to work. Well, in order not to get depressed, start thinking about what do I love to do?
Yeah.
And that book, I'm sure you know it, Julia Cameron, and
Oh,
she talks about
I know the name.
journaling. I think it's like 30 minutes you have to journal, and it's for older people, and men and women, and to find out what you really love. So
Not The Artist's Way or something like that, is it? No.
yes,
It is?
it
Oh,
is
there we
the
go.
author. Yeah,
There we go.
yeah, that's one of her books. It might
Yeah.
not be the book, but it's one of them. You can get it on Audible, and I think that's when I listen to it. So what is it that you like to do? I never thought that I liked coloring, with pencils and
Yeah.
crayons.
Yeah.
And I realized through my journey, it has nothing to do with housing. But when I joined the author program, I was like, how many times have I bought coloring books for
Yes.
adults?
Yes.
And now I'm creating coloring books. So really, I would ask them, where are you? Where do you want to go? What is holding you back? And really, or what is your why? Why are you on this earth?
Yeah.
What is yours to do? And we can only really, I thought I could affect the world, but the only world I can affect is the one here. And
Yes.
it's bloom where you are planted. And so look around your community. I did a presentation for a bunch of real estate investors last week. And I was saying, look around and how can you change your business to impact your community? It's the same, you're building houses, but how does that impact your community and how do
Mm.
you serve that?
Yes.
And it just refocusing because once you start serving, you aren't depressed anymore. People will show up for you because you like almost have this neon sign saying, I'm here to serve. And whether you go to church or a knitting group or whatever it is that you're doing, keep your ears out for something cool thing that somebody says. You never know what you're going to end up with. I didn't intend to create tiny house communities. I didn't have a clue why I wanted to do a PhD other than I was sick and tired of the Affordable Care Act. And quite frankly, I thought it was a cool thing to do. All my friends were saying, there's no return on investment. And I'm like, yeah, it's an investment in me.
One of my core values, in fact, probably my main driver as a core value is actually service. And it's what motivates me too. And that's what I constantly say. The same thing as you is if you want to change the world, change your world, serve the people around you, see a need, fulfill that need. In it, you get the double blessing, you'll be fulfilled as well. But just that's how you can make a difference. And that is a powerful driver in there, not sitting alone, feeling like my best years are behind me, because you're actively doing something now.
'Cause you
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know, and you
Hmm.
don't know what's in front of you, and it
Yeah.
could be, like, more exciting than what was behind you.
Yeah.
I've had a great career. And that's back there, now what's in front of me, and
Yeah.
I absolutely that's why I've kept you on this call for so long. I could talk housing and affordability and
Yeah.
tiny and empowerment for ages because I hope that somebody, at least if I've impacted one person, that's thrilling.
For those who have been listening by audio platforms, Michelle's actually on the road right now. She's sitting in her car talking to us, but I'm just so grateful to have her on here. This is an amazing lady who's really gone boots and all into making a difference to the community, particularly for women at midlife and beyond. So, Michelle, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. Safe travels as you are on
Yes.
the road, spreading your wisdom
Yep.
about tiny homes and living, affordable living for everyone. And everybody else, we will see you next week on our next episode of the Rocky Midlife Podcast.